Right, good morning, everybody. I'll get Ruben to start with the karakia this morning.
Thanks, Tori. Kia tau ngā manaakitanga a te me ngaro, ki runga, ki tēnā o tātou. Kia mahia te hua makihikihi. Kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te aroha, toi te reo Māori. Kia tūturo, ka whakamaua, kia tina, huie tāki.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you for that, Ruben. Now, apologies this morning. I see we have got everybody online. Yep, so no apologies needed. Declarations of interest, I'm happy to take those throughout the meeting. And confirmation of previous minutes. So that's all fairly straightforward. Anyone have anything to raise, or otherwise I call for a mover and seconder? Okay, so moved by Scott, seconded by Nigel. Nothing else to discuss. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. That's carried. Thank you. Right. Public forum, Liz. Now, was I right in saying that there is nothing for public forum this morning? You're on mute. Liz, you're on mute. Thank you.
Yeah, no public forum and no deputation, so straight through to item 7, which is the briefing from Project Littleton.
Thank you. I see that I've got Helen on Zoom call this morning. Good morning, Helen.
Good morning, kia ora koutou. It's nice to be here. I nearly didn't make it, but I'm here, so it feels good. My daughter, we're both having some testing today done, so at least we're not in person. That's all I can say.
It's certainly interesting out there. Yeah, we were just talking about that earlier. So no, I will leave it to you. I'll put myself on mute, so go for it.
Great. Well, it's a pleasure to be here and to meet you all. I'd like to start this morning with the latest IPCC report, which of course came out this year in February. Research shows that we're now in the critical stage of needing active responses to the compounded weather events that we're seeing in New Zealand and beyond. These events are increasing in impacts and risks to our population health, ecosystems, infrastructure, livelihoods, and food security. The New Zealand Climate Change Risk Assessment outlines that these risks are real for New Zealand, and we don't need to look any further than Gisborne last week even Flea Bay, on our own Banks Peninsula recently, to see it already unfolding. We need to reach our target of reducing emissions by 2030, and to achieve these targets, all our decisions and choices must be seen through a climate lens. When I saw the Banks Peninsula Community Board vision for 2022, I was really inspired and also curious to learn more. Does our current climate and ecological emergency sit central to all decisions and planning for Banks Peninsula? I saw there was advocation for native regeneration, supporting the cultural and ecological health of the harbour, supporting a reduction in carbon emissions. And so coming through to my role, which is, of course, a newly established position as a community carbon coach, is an opportunity to show the rest of New Zealand what's possible on Banks Peninsula and to become a role model for our communities and for others, because we're all transitioning to a climate resilient future together. So what is the community carbon coach role? Well, it's a diverse community engagement in the areas of energy, transport, water, waste, food, and community resilience. I do a lot of education and outreach, working with businesses and households. I network and liaison with the Christchurch City Council and partners, ECAN and beyond. Littleton Port Company, had a meeting with a guy from Fonterra the other day. Very diverse connections. Event organising and management, resource development and sharing locally. Some of our goals for this year are to visit 150 households, auditing their carbon footprint, planning for reductions and pledges for lifestyle changes. Visiting 40 businesses to provide a toolkit and support a roadmap for reducing emissions. offering 8 sustainable workshops in our community through the Sustainable Living Education Trust, writing good news stories for the local newspaper and social media, and interviewing locals, because those are the stories that will actually help support others to see what they can do. Rolling out a compost and recycling trial on London Street for Plastic Free July. Starting a Bring Back the Bokashi Back campaign, linked into a community compost scheme, redirecting local food waste and turning it into compost. We're also aiming to reconnect to local food networks through the community gardens, food bank and meals for elderly. Working also with Project Littleton, which is of course the organisation that I'm based within, to promote sustainability through the farmers market info table, the garage sale repair cafe and the community gardens. We're also running a campaign with waste bins for reduction of takeaways with cafes in Littleton, and working to promote organisations like the Tool Library and the Toy Library, because they're really fundamental to our community if we want to reduce consumption and also waste. We're working with the council and also the Learning Days Education Festival in May to promote the library and the creative spaces and those resources that can be used locally. Some of the outcomes of my role for this year and beyond are to have greater promotion of the Christchurch City Council programs that are already there, and creating a model for other communities to use and to pick up these resources. To create resources which show a pathway for local carbon reduction in Littleton, for households to have lower energy bills and be warmer and healthier, and for more healthy local food, improved social resilience and social connectedness. For businesses, we hope them to become more resource efficient in the areas of energy, transport, water and waste, also creating a unique proposition in Christchurch for Littleton as a sustainable destination, a point of difference for these businesses. We would really like schools to become more active in the community and that children become more connected to the environment through programs which offer a pathway to understand how our everyday choices make a difference. And that we can see changes in our built and natural environment through cleaner beaches, reduction in waste, energy and greenhouse gases. And of course, that Littleton community develops a climate change resilience attitude and deepens its connection to the surrounding harbour and ecosystems. For 2023 and beyond, we really hope to continue our sustainability workshops, good local stories, audits of households and businesses, develop local employment initiatives through sustainability, local production of tools and resources, develop an industry working group in Climate Friendly Littleton. We're applying for funding at the moment to create a sustainability expo, locating Littleton as a place to live sustainably, which will hopefully coincide with the CLGP for around this time next year. Creation of Banks Peninsula as a carbon resource through regenerative planting and creation of large reserves. And also just to see Littleton Harbour, excuse me, as a place that can role model climate resilience, because that's really what we need in this time. So thank you for your time.
Helen, that's fantastic. It's really exciting, and I caught you mentioned Bokashi. I happen to know that our local play centre is still using Bokashi system, and it's fantastic for the garden, the crop that it's growing at play centre, just by that having that regeneration. So no, thank you, and that's really exciting. If we got any questions from anybody around the table, we have got a couple of questions. So Scott, got a question?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Helen. Sounds like you've got a lot on your plate.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of different hats there, and yeah, your goals are pretty amazing. So good luck with that. I mean, where do you get your funding from, and how is it dispersed in those activities? Because obviously you're doing a lot of different things and working with a lot of different groups.
Yeah, so this role was funded in part through the Christchurch City Council Sustainability Fund, and in part through Project Littleton. They topped it up, and Project Littleton has funding. It's a registered charity, so it comes from a number of different sources: Littleton Port Company, charities, the Lottery Commission, we apply for funding every year, so it's a constant reevaluation of what's live, what's available, and what can be done. So yeah, I'm working with my manager Jack Newbound to ensure that this role can continue for a number of years. And I guess any funding that could become available locally would be an incredible gift to Littleton and of course Banks Peninsula in general.
So with that, is your the projection and the work you're doing in the community, is that for a year's time, or is that we're hoping to continue it in 3 years and that's what you're planning for?
That's correct. So we have set out our goals for this year, which I read out, and then of course following through into 2023 and beyond. We see this project as you said, it's very diverse, and there's a lot on my plate. So we see this role as developing and including many other people. And as I say, I think it should become central to what we're doing as a community, looking at our own individual footprints and our own businesses and community groups. And so, yes, looking to make this role I work 20 hours at the moment. That's my paid amount, looking to make this role full-time, and then also work with, as I said, an industry group and climate friendly Littleton to develop those groups so that we can then actually get some local working groups. And I'd really like to see a residents association as well. I don't think there's an active one in Littleton at the moment. So just developing more community resilience and bringing people together. I think with the virus at the moment, it's hard just to even get out of the house at the moment for some people. So,
well, love the Mihi. Support you lots. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, for that, Scott. I've got Tyrone, then Nigel.
Thanks, Tori. Kia ora, Helen. It's Tyrone here. Before I do ask my question, actually, we do have an active residents association, and the chair is Gen Maynard, and I can flick you through his contact details if you need.
Yes, please do.
So just, I guess with a town like Littleton, like over the years, where like initially like 20, 30, 40 years ago plus, most people worked in the town, and so their commute to work was really low carbon. But as things have evolved, and Littleton has kind of evolved into effectively a dormitory suburb, where people commute to work in the city in driving. So Littleton's carbon footprint over sort of a period of decades has probably increased astronomically. What's the best way to try and address that kind of evolution in how people move around, and how sort of, just how those things kind of can blow out?
Yeah, really good question. Of course, transport after agriculture being one of our biggest areas of greenhouse gas emissions in New Zealand. And, people are really attached to their cars, me and myself included. And I think that it's through public awareness and education and getting people together to sit down and have a conversation around what's possible. Then also working with local central government to establish some structural changes, something we dream of, but we haven't quite got there yet. Again, working with the industry group to look, because Littleton has this, it's such a diverse setup of, you've got the port, you've got the community, residents, business, you've got the rail, we've got public transport. There's so many areas there that we can work with. I don't have all the answers. That's the short of it. But I think it's about getting people together to have a conversation around carpooling, having I've just recently moved back from Quebec. I was living in Montreal for the last 6 years. And there they have a number of options where you can, people are giving up their cars, and, there's cars that are available for people to use, but you use it for a short journey. So you can then, it's like we have an electric car here that people can use, but it's at a much cheaper rate because there's a lot more uptake of people. So car sharing, public transport, better public transport, of course, as well.
Because bicycles is a bit of a tricky one because of the obvious barrier.
Yeah,
So,
it's interesting. There is a conversation within Project Littleton around getting bikes through the tunnel. And again, I think it's will take time, and that's something that we were hoping for this festival next year would be to potentially have a few hours where bikes could go through the tunnel, and just see what that felt like, see what that created in terms of opening up a space for that kind of change, or that possible change.
Yeah, it's really good to be able to see bikes get through the tunnel really easily. I don't know what the solution is. We've tried a few different things on this board, but it's kind of quite hard with all the the minutiae of the bureaucratic process. But anyway, it's a
and I mean, there could be
dream.
a van, or there could be some kind of transport. I mean, I know that in Montreal they have a lot of electric bikes that are relocated, like the scooters and bikes. I think that's happening in Christchurch now, where somebody relocates the bike. So it could just be a bike relocation service that's funded in part by the council, and then there's a local business that is able to do it. Again, it's creating local business, it's supporting people to have a healthier life. It's just these initiatives that need to get off the ground, really. It's just making the resources available for people to do it. It's not that there's not the drive, it's actually just about connecting the dots a lot of the time.
Brilliant. Well, we're delighted to have you as part of the community. So awesome.
Thanks.
And look forward to getting to know you much better. Cheers.
Thanks. Okay, I've got Nigel. You got a question for Helen?
Yeah, I do, Helen, and it's great. It's great. This subject is really, really top of the list for the whole world, and I guess it's how we network with people like yourselves to form some sort of a lobby as well to make sure things can happen. So my question to you is really, how can we put our energies in to help support you?
Thank you, Nigel. It's great to hear that. And it's a good question. I think potentially I'm going to get to know you as well, know what's possible. As I say, I've been living overseas for the last 6 years, so it's a bit, I've got a bit of a knowledge gap there around what's been going on locally. So taking the time to really connect with who's doing what. I was just in touch, as I say, with for example, the compost and recycling rollout that we want to do here in Littleton. In July, finding the right person to talk to in council who can help me to get the bins on the street. Basically, I've got the bins, I just need to know that it's okay to put them out there and that they're not going to get taken away. So it's really those kind of how do we break down those silos of who's doing what and make the information available. And that's a big part of my role, really, is networking, sharing the information from what council's already doing and what community groups are already doing and bringing it together. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I just want to share what's already happening. So
there can be some really big win-wins, and I think that's the best way to progress this, is to show win-wins. I'm a great advocate for having carbon credits for native plants. This is a big focal point, particularly for the Peninsula, where pine trees get all the carbon credits and native plants do. So there can be a win-win through biodiversity as well, which goes on to support tourism, and that's those type of integrated decisions. They can be quite powerful. But I think anything we can do to support that would be fantastic.
Yeah, and I guess I've got a question for all of you. Would be what's the vision for 2023 and beyond? What are some of the goals of the community board going forwards in terms of accelerating the transition for Banks Peninsula, and are there areas that can be put aside as reserves? And are you working with organisations such as ECOS to bring them on board to support the development of those, working with farmers to set aside land, corridors that can be then utilised not only as carbon sinks but as biodiversity corridors? I'd love to come back in and share, and hear what's going on for the vision for the community board as well.
I know that the Water Zone Committee is working on a lot of those themselves as well, Helen. So that'd be a good group to also, I guess, join forces with and collaborate. I see that Ruben's got his hand up, and then Andrew, and then we'll. So Ruben.
Cool.
Thanks Nigel.
Corey, and thanks, Helen. I just want to echo, I guess, what everybody else has said, how awesome it is to have you and your role active in Littleton and for Banks Peninsula. And also just with your question around from your email and also from your conversation here this morning, I'll try and raise that in Members Exchange today and try and get a contact name for you to follow up with for those bins, because I think it's an awesome idea.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ruben. Andrew.
Thank you. I mean, I guess just in terms of that vision for the role that the Peninsula can play in the solutions to problems that we've talked about and the way forward, not only for Banks Peninsula, but for the city. I mean, I think in terms of carbon offset for the city, opportunities for planting, biodiversity planting in particular, Banks Peninsula offers a huge amount of opportunity. And actually the Banks Peninsula landform, including the Port Hills, as well as just the Banks Peninsula, what we think of as the community board area, the geopolitical area. And some of that work is already going on. The Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust and the covenanting work that they're doing. A number of peninsula landowners who have willingly set aside land for biodiversity corridors, for biodiversity planting. The amount of land which is transferring from private ownership into public ownership or trust ownership with conservation in mind. I spent most of the day yesterday on a block of land above Little River, High Bear Peak, which has just transferred into the ownership of a group of conservationists who are absolutely looking at the conservation values of that land and what native regeneration could look like, at the same time as looking at outdoor recreation opportunities. And of course, the combination of those two leads to education opportunities, particularly around biodiversity and climate change as well. So there's a huge amount of work going on. I'm excited by what you've presented this morning, because I think, there is an opportunity for a coordination role, a stocktake role, making sure that we take advantage of all of the opportunities that are out there in a joined up way. But yeah, the Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust, Joseph Langer Trust, Department of Conservation, Rod Donald Banks Peninsula Trust, Christchurch City Council, Christchurch Foundation, a number of other private organisations, Meridian, for example, have been very interested in looking at planting opportunities for offset. The time is right, and I'm excited that we've got somebody in the role, but also the way that you've described it, I think is incredibly exciting. So a lot going on, but certainly some opportunities for coordination and building that. And the time is absolutely right. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think you're right there. Potentially that's a partnership, is to actually map all of the land that's in transition and see the difference between what it is right now and what it is in a few years' time.
And where there might be opportunities.
And
so there's land which is currently in transition. There's land where there are currently conversations going on about sites of ecological significance and protection through the district plan, where there's opportunity for biodiversity planting and biodiversity outcomes. A really good opportunity, or a really good example actually of this, is Goffs Bay, which is one of the areas that was devastated by the recent flooding and landslip events. And the zone committee had already done a lot of work in the Goffs Bay catchments and had put some funding forward. Of course, landowners in Goffs Bay are now looking at the viability of their land from an agricultural point of view, quite differently than they were before. And they're looking at replacing fencing, which was destroyed in the storm and by the floods and so on. There are opportunities there for for conversations about conservation with those landowners that perhaps didn't exist even before that event. And, I think that whole event was a bit of a wake-up call for some. Some people have been saying that we're going to see more of those storm events more often as a result of climate change, that inevitably means that we're talking about risk differently, we're talking about future land use differently, and within that, there are some huge opportunities that are top of mind now that weren't even 2 or 3 years ago. But I mean, I guess the other challenge for you in your role is not duplicating work that's already going on, and at the same time looking for opportunities where there might be land that's currently in private ownership that might be coming to the market in the near future, where an organisation like the Rod Donald Trust or the Joseph Langer Trust, for example, might have an interest in purchasing that land to get the biodiversity and outdoor recreation outcomes that private ownership hasn't provided. And the move into public ownership of Te Ahu Pataki, the summits of Mount Herbert and Mount Bradley, is one very recent example of an initiative taken by the Rod Donald Trust, a huge community fundraise, and a really good public ownership outcome that preserves that land, but more importantly, the biodiversity outcomes that that land presents, not only for this generation, but more particularly for future generations.
Thanks, Andrew. And yeah, no, lots of information there, Helen. I see you taking lots of notes. So.
Yeah.
I'm happy to have a side of this meeting if you want to mine my knowledge. I'd be very happy to do that.
Yes, I've written your name down. Thank you.
Okay. We've got Penelope. Pen.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So hi, Helen. I'm Community Governance Manager for the Banks Peninsula Governance Team, and I'd certainly like to offer you a really effective way to connect into council, and that's through our Community Development Advisors. So we have 2 based in Littleton, Andrea Wild and Philippa Hay, and it is part of their role to help facilitate connecting in with all sorts of different council units. So, so yeah, we'll have the staff be in touch with you so that, yeah.
I have connected in with those 2.
Okay.
So yeah, I've already got their contact details and have connected in with them. And I guess sometimes it's nice to, but yeah, I guess I'll try and go through those routes a bit more. Thank you.
Please do, because they can just facilitate different units in council for easy access for you. So cool, great, good to know that they've already been in touch.
Yeah.
Pen. No, thank you, Helen. We appreciate you coming along this morning, and we look forward to almost using this as a template on how we can roll that out in other communities, because I know there is certainly that interest around the greater Banks Peninsula, and you yourself, starting off that role within Littleton and Whakaropo, and then perhaps seeing how that looks in other communities. So no, thank you for your time this morning.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I hope to be able to return with some more updates, and also I look forward to seeing the vision for the community board. When does that next vision? When do you start working on that?
We'd start working on that with the new board. So after the elections, and so later this year, and then start of next year would be focusing on what that looks like going forward.
Okay. Well, all the best.
Thanks.
For your meeting.
Thanks, Helen.
Bye.
Right. Thank you.
Right. Now I have onto item. Sorry. Okay. So now we're on to item 8. Have we got Jane on the call?
Sorry, Tori, we usually just have a resolution to accept that. I think was it in that minutes, Katie, that there's a resolution to accept that recommendation?
Yes, that's right.
Sorry, I missed.
The resolution reads, notes the information supplied during the briefing.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So we need a mover and seconder for.
Thank you.
Somebody like to move? So Nigel, we happy to move?
Right.
And Ruben, happy to second? All those in favour?
Aye.
Okay, that's carried. But no, there is lots of good relationships to be formed with Helen and the team at Project Littleton. Pen, I see you've got your hand up.
Well, just about the next item, Jane isn't going to be in attendance to speak to this, so I can hopefully field questions around that.
Right, okay, well, we can move on to item 8 then. That's the DRF Pigeon Bay Hall Committee. I'll just get that up on my screen. Okay, so Pen's here to answer any questions. Does anyone have any questions regarding this dairy funding? Yeah, Ruben?
I just dream of a ride-on lawnmower, so I want to know where they can get one for $2,000.
Yeah.
From a friendly local.
Yeah, I think there's no, that's fantastic. No, if there's no other questions, I guess we'll just take a mover and seconder for this. Anyone like to move?
I'm happy to move.
Ruben's happy to move. Andrew's happy to second. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye, and that's everybody else's hands up, thumbs up. So that is carried. Thank you. That was a fairly straightforward one. But yes, no, it's good to see that, like I say, a very friendly local can help us with things like that. Since it is a short meeting today, we are now going on to members exchange. So, Jamie, since you're here with us for a moment, do you want to have have you got anything to share quickly before you get called off? I know you're multitasking today.
Part of me wishes I do get called off because that means there's customers, and the other part's like I don't want to miss out on a whole lot of stuff. No, I've haven't really had much brought to my attention, guys. It's it's been interesting times over here, obviously with the COVID numbers spreading around Canterbury pretty high. I think Akaroa's getting impacted a bit. We had a very quiet weekend from a retail perspective this weekend compared to last weekend, but it's onwards and upwards. We have got businesses that have had to close here while staff are positive, so it's certainly amongst us. But from a committee board perspective, haven't really had much come my way. So all good, thank you, Tori.
Thanks, Jamie. Right, next I've got Scott on my screen. Scott?
Kia ora, Tori. Just like to highlight for Nigel's education, you can now claim tax credits or carbon credits for regenerative native forests, also for whiteling pines. So a lot of landowners are actually going to that model. It's quite a bit of money. At the moment, it sits about $8,000 per hectare for regenerative natives. So yeah, it's well worth looking into. Or if anyone is talking to a landowner that wants to get paid for regenerative natives, flick them my contacts and I can put them in touch with the right people. Or Martin Rutledge from ECAN, who's also quite skilled and knowledgeable on the area. So apart from that, the only other thing in my neck of the woods that's been going on is the Godley House. A lot of local support, a lot of local professionals offering their services. I've met with two breweries from up north of the South Island that had the funding and would be happy to throw a building on there, but had no interest in working with the community or facilitating a function room or anything like that. So we've given them the information they need, but the community won't be backing them or supporting them. So we're still going for a community-led model. We do have a local investor that owns another establishment that's quite keen to invest, but he could only invest half the money that it would probably need to build it. So we need to come up with the rest before we put on a community proposal. But I paid for surveying on the site to get done last week, and I'm meeting with a commercial/residential architect next week to draw up the concept plans and show to the community to get their feedback and proceed. It's taken a lot of time, but it's good and positive. Apart from that, that's me. Everything's pretty quiet. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Scott. Next on my screen, I've got Ruben. Got anything?
Thanks, Tori. I just had I think I raised this either the last meeting or the meeting before around the road closure that's in place on the Ripon Oxford corner, and it seems to be ongoing and not much action and not much communication on it. And I think part of the issue is that because there's only so many roads into Littleton, it probably affects households, or does affect households much further beyond it than you would ordinarily have because of the sort of funnel effect of traffic. But I just wondered whether there'd been any update on what was happening there and a time frame for when it might see some action. But that's a question we'd raised previously. I just wondered whether there'd been an action for an update attached to that previously.
I'm pretty sure there was, Reuben. Is it actually roadworks, or is it's digging up for wastewater, stormwater?
Yeah, I think it's stormwater. I think it's the brick barrel, which is probably a really tricky job and is really deep.
Yeah.
But it just seems to be not even necessarily a lack of comms. It might just be a lack of comms to households further up that it's affecting their ability to drive around, or the route that they can drive.
Okay. I'll have a look at that. When we create an action, that staff are generally given a 3-month time frame to respond to it, just because there are so many actions. Yeah. So it probably actually, that won't have run out yet, but I'll follow up and see if there's a way we could get more comms around it, because I don't think that the comms were involved in the action that we asked for.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. And the only other thing was just a note, really, that the market on Saturday with change to traffic lights and scanning in just seemed a lot busier, and a lot of people who hadn't necessarily been coming seemed to be coming back. So that's a real positive for Littleton on the weekend, to see good foot traffic and lots of people out and spending money locally.
Thanks, Reuben. Appreciate the update, and yeah, it is good to see more people out and about. Tyrone.
I'll just start off with, I just want to do a bit of a shout out to the work that's being done around whakaraupo in terms of predator-free Banks Peninsula. Like, I know, like, there's so much work going on, and it's amazing, and I know that the stuff being done on Koitiriti Spit recently has achieved a bit of press coverage, and rightly so. I think it's also just worth noting that, like, the work being done, particularly around Rapaki at the moment, is pretty epic. Like, we've caught like about 200 odd possums up there, just recently, like this year, sort of thing. Don't quote me on the time frame, but like, really recently. And there's a restoration of Māori reserve land up there. It was about 270 hectares, I think. Just in terms of pest and predator control, and there's heaps of old man's beard and all that sort of stuff. So they're doing a lot of amazing work up there, and I think it's just wanted to just raise that, just let the rest of the board sort of know about that. And yeah, I mean, there really is a lot of good work just going on around the Healthy Harbour stuff in general, and the LPC are doing some brilliant stuff with stormwater upgrading and stuff. So it's all really coming together. What the main thing I wanted to talk about actually was, I think we need to have a serious conversation around, excuse me, around, should have lost my train of thought, apologies. Come back to me, Tori. Go on to the next one. I'll come back. I'll come back on what it is.
Okay, no problem. Come back to Tyrone in a minute. Andrew.
Thank you very much. So you and I, and possibly others, received an email this morning, I think it was, from Richard at the Naval Point Club, concern around the number of break-ins to vehicles in that area. I'm aware from social media that there has been some of that activity, and obviously the Naval Point Club are aware of it as well. He is wanting to initiate a conversation about security cameras. They have one security camera that covers a part of the area that's connected to and administered through their building. And whilst they would have the ability to connect more cameras into that system, the Naval Point Club themselves don't have the ability to install more cameras, given that the vehicles concerned are vehicles owned by members of the community, I guess the thought was that the community board may have an interest in looking at or pursuing the idea that we could increase security camera footage in that area, the security camera coverage in that area, with the current system they've got at the Naval Point Club been the hub of that system, but maybe with us raising funds or finding funds to add something to that. So I raise it, I guess, just to let the whole board know that that conversation has started, and to think about where that conversation might go in terms of the board's process if it was something that we wanted to support.
Yeah, thank you. Andrew, did you mention to them the board's discretionary response fund? Because if they wanted to extend that system, they would be able to apply for some funding from that. That's
right. So I haven't gone
fast.
back to them at all as yet, other than to let them know that I was going to raise it at this meeting today. But certainly that is something I could go back to them with. So that would be the Naval Point Club applying for discretionary response fund funding to install more cameras to increase the coverage.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'll go back to them with that suggestion. That's fine. Now, I spent a lot of the week in various different parts of it, a lot of the weekend in various different parts of Banks Peninsula, which was great. And some of my moving around on the peninsula took me on a couple of journeys through Gebby's Pass, where it became very obvious to me that there's significant evidence of a lot of boy racer activity, car enthusiast activity out that way. And again, I guess that's just really for the board's information. Anybody that has driven through there recently would have seen the same as I saw, some hideous burnout marks and tyre marks on the road that suggest that there's quite a bit of illegal and dangerous driving going on. And you look at the positioning of some of those tyre marks, there's private property and public property that's pretty close to being put at risk by some of the manoeuvres that are taking place. So I guess that's just, again, a heads up that certainly hasn't gone away. And the evidence possibly is that it's got a lot worse, or certainly is ongoing. So where did I go? On Friday afternoon, I went to Robinson's Bay. Nigel and Suki Thompson and Sue Church were part of that meeting as well. We were having a look at the Pavitt Cottage at Robinson's Bay, but we were also having a look at some of the land that council has just purchased for the Akaroa wastewater scheme and for the disposal of treated wastewater, which includes another small cottage at the very bottom of that land, Wyn Williams Cottage, and also has got some other heritage values. There's the remains of the old water wheel and the water race down there, and some of the land will be subject to archaeological covenants or archaeological considerations because of its future use as part of the old sawmill down there, the value of these two cottages and some other buildings in between that no longer exist, or just the foundations exist, and so on. So, I guess this is really just a heads up that representatives of the Robinson's Bay community will be coming along to a future meeting, speaking in the public forum initially about the opportunities for a heritage park or some heritage conservation at the bottom corner of that land. It represents an opportunity for some of that community offset that we talked about as part of the Akaroa wastewater scheme, allowing a new community trust to start doing some of this work. And the amount of the land that we're talking about, it's just that very bottom corner of the land that council's purchased for the wastewater scheme, could be as little as 4 or 5% of that total land that we're talking about there. So I guess really a heads up that conversation is going on, and the Robinson's Bay community will be wanting to talk to the board, looking for some kind of in principle support, I imagine, at some stage in the near future. As is usual in that part of the peninsula, good people in the community working together to scope some kind of outcome that would see those heritage assets preserved and enhanced, and I guess the story able to be told as part of the Robinson's Bay story, but also the heritage of wider Banks Peninsula, and some well-progressed conversations there that they'll bring to the board in the near future. I went to Steadfast, so I met Nolene and Jenny at Steadfast at their request, and we looked at the Steadfast buildings, but we also looked at some other opportunities for community meeting space in Cass Bay that both Nolene and Jenny are keen to raise with the board. I guess my question is, where are we at in terms of organising that opportunity for the full board to go out there and have a look at Steadfast and to be having these conversations on site rather than just me as an individual, but the full community board?
Yep, so we're going to discuss that. We're going to align some dates with the board this afternoon, well,
Perfect.
after the meeting. Yep.
Yeah, excellent. I know they're keen for that to be sooner rather than later. And I guess with some relaxation around the COVID rules and probably a bit more willingness to be meeting face-to-face, or maybe soon some more willingness to be meeting face-to-face, it would be good if we could set that in train sooner rather than later, but we can pick that up this afternoon. That's good. I was out yesterday with the Rod Donald Trust trustees, having a look at the recreation opportunities and the biodiversity opportunities presented by the land at High Bear Peak, just out the back of Little River, the opportunity for some circular walking tracks going off the top of Council Hill Road in Little River, linking in with the opportunity for a walk along the top of the old railway embankment, so joining up the Little River Township with the pub along some land which is owned by Craig Mason in Little River, and essentially creating a loop walk of about 5.5, maybe 6 kilometres, but at the same time creating some safe, easily usable access that would join up the township with the pub in the Little River, so avoiding the need for people to be walking along the roadside. So that was really interesting. I met one of the new landowners out there as well, which was great. And then the Rod Donald Trust had their annual strategic planning meeting at the Akuti Hall. Beautiful afternoon out there yesterday, and a great venue for that meeting. Resulted in a small refresh of the strategy, but a kind of steady as she goes approach, without any major refresh at this stage, just some tweaking and updating. So that's good. A successful day, but a highlight of it really was the opportunity to have a look at the opportunities presented by that land, which has recently changed ownership above Little River. There are some particularly amazing pictures on my Facebook page that show some of that land and some of the great views from that land, but also the proximity to the Little River Township as well. The Rod Donald Trust have long talked about economic opportunities for Little River as a jumping off point. And I think what we're looking at here is the opportunity for linkage to Te Ara Patika, possibly some of the aspirations of the Little River Rail Trail Trust about continuing the Little River Rail Trail on a circular route that comes back into Port Levy, Diamond Harbour, all of which potentially have got economic benefit for Little River. So certainly projects that we're keen to pursue. My only other question was on the Banks Peninsula flooding. I'm aware of more media interest in this. Where are we at with the lessons learned report and the public meeting?
Just grabbed my question. That was one of my questions too, Andrew.
John Phil Sell came back to me with an email last week, and it was kind of soon and when COVID permits. But again, with the changes to the rules, I'm wondering whether we're able to find and commit to a date for the public meeting and progress that. But we need to know that that lessons learned report had landed before we got to the public meeting. I'm keen that none of this drops through the cracks, and I'm also keen that we pick it up in a meaningful way from a timing point of view. If we leave it too long, it'll cease to have the meaning that it needs to have.
So, Pen, I see that Robin's got her hand up as well. So, Robin?
Yeah, I can't speak to the lessons learned report, but I have gone back to request permission to set up the public meeting, or the residents meeting actually.
Yep.
And I'm just waiting back. That's gone to IMT, I believe, to get signed off. It was one of the first off the ranks as far as like, are we good to do that? So I'd put a few dates forward in April for permission, and I'm just waiting to hear back from that from John Fussell.
That's excellent. Thank you for that. Good to hear. I mean, I do think that lessons learned report, you know, we just need to make sure that that will have landed before we go to the residents meeting. And just, I guess, highlighting there are a couple of long weekends in April where people might be away, Easter and Anzac. So maybe just staying away from those. But yeah, great to hear that April dates are on the radar. I'm delighted by that. That's great. Thank you. And I guess the final update for me would be on COVID. I'm now fully recovered, but I realise that, you know, as you talk to people around town, there are not too many families that are not affected in some way by this, either with people that have got COVID in the household, or people who are isolating, or, you know, people who are in recovery or recently recovered. So it's certainly affecting our community. It's also affecting the way that we're working at council as well. It's slowing down the turnaround of some requests, and it's also starting to affect the delivery of some projects, just because of the sheer number of people that are isolating or off sick at the moment. Council isn't unusual in that. There are a large number of organisations affected by exactly this issue at the moment. The advice seems to be that Christchurch and Canterbury are reaching a peak, so hopefully we'll be seeing some improvement in that scenario in the near future.
Thank you, Andrew. Penelope, you do.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. So in response to Andrew's item, so the Eastern Bays work, it's not about the lessons learned report, but that just to say that this week that the civil defence manager, the new civil defence manager, who also led the recovery for the event in December, and some other staff meeting with some of the households in some of those bays this week. And that was the short-term follow-up in lieu of being able to have the bigger meeting. So there are several households that will be visited this week by those staff. And just going back to the Robinsons Bay item, Andrew, was that idea of the Heritage Park, was that raised with has it been raised through the Community Reference Group as part of the work that they're doing, looking at recreational opportunities and benefits to the local area from the wastewater?
I'm not sure whether it's gone through that process.
Can I talk to that?
My understanding is that the people in Robinsons Bay that are driving this will probably want to bring a public participation item to the next regular community board meeting. So that would be an opportunity to ask them about that. I think it's something, and Nigel might know more about this than I do, it's something that's come out of the recent purchase of that land, but also some likely upcoming changes to the Pavitt Cottage Trust as well. And it's thought there's an opportunity there, but it's quite organic. So I don't know that it has been through any of that process. I mean, the people that are promoting it are keen for it to be seen as a heritage project and an opportunity with the land ownership, rather than something that necessarily is totally aligned or needs to be totally aligned with the wastewater work, particularly when you look at the part of the land which has been purchased, which is actually going to be used for wastewater disposal. So I don't know whether that answers the question or not. I'm also not sure that I'm the right person to answer the question.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
I can answer that question.
Yeah, Nigel raised it at the last meeting.
Yeah, I can answer that question. Can you hear me?
Nigel, go. Sorry.
Thank you. Yes, it was actually set aside. There's been discussions in the wind up of the review meeting with the wastewater that that's a tract of land that's somewhat undefined. I think what Kylie was suggesting was the piece of the orchard. It's the orchard and behind Pavitt Cottage. there is a desire to maybe extend that somewhat up to this to the cottage, but yes, it has been discussed, and some land is to be set aside for that. Can I just continue on from there, or do you want to go back to Ben? Is that?
No, I think you can carry on for now. I had Tyrone to go back to, but I'm sure Tyrone can wait a couple of minutes. So yeah, Nigel, carry on. You might as well.
Okay, yeah. Sort of segues into the next piece of what I was going to bring up today, was the I&I status. You know, the whole need for this irrigation and the ponding was all about the amount of stormwater getting into the wastewater system, and I've had some very favourable results with that. And I would like to see a briefing back to the board around the I&I savings and the status, and how it's going to impact on the irrigation field and the storage. That all comes into this whole conversation about what land's left and what land's needed, and it will flow on to the desire to have this heritage land set aside. So that would be good if we could have a briefing on that. It would be fantastic. And I guess the last thing I've got is that there is a Kickstart fund that the government has set aside for businesses that have been severely impacted by the lack of foreign tourism. This is Kaikoura's been given about 49 million or something. I think in other areas around the South Island, Christchurch has been given some money, and there's nothing allocated for Akaroa or the Banks Peninsula. So I would have thought that maybe some discussion or some sort of follow-up on that. It seems a little bit unfair that the businesses on Banks Peninsula have not been recognised in this, in needing this. It's because we're part of Christchurch City. It's part of one big parcel, and there's no movement or perceived movement on any funding coming to the peninsula that have been severely impacted. I don't know if you can answer anything around that, Andrew, or know of that fund.
No, I'm probably not in a position to answer that, actually.
Thank you. Well, maybe that's a question that should be answered. I believe that Christchurch NZ have got the job of allocating that funding, but it's been lumped into Christchurch. We're lumped into Christchurch, which has watered down any opportunity for that funding to come out on the peninsula.
Nigel, do you know the name of that fund?
Oh, I think it's the Kickstart Fund.
Oh,
I think it's something like that. I can flick that to you. I've got the information here.
Thank you. That'd be lovely. Thank you.
That, Ben. Thanks.
Right, thanks, Nigel. Right. Is that the lot you had for today?
Yeah, that's me pretty much. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Nigel. Okay, Tyrone, we'll go back to that last bit.
Sorry, I didn't mind waiting to the end. It's funny. I just had a bit of a what do you call it? Like the old neurons kind of fired in the wrong direction. I kept wanting to say bike park, but what I meant to say was dog park. I wanted to have a serious conversation about dog parks because I know that we've been talking about that stuff quite a lot recently, and had a bit of a catch up with a few people over the weekend, looking at the various little projects on the go around Littleton. And I know Tory and Little River, there are similar sorts of issues that are kind of have their foundation in the bylaw change many years ago. But I guess we've looked in this board, we've looked at sort of a Gollins Bay opportunity and sort of various bits and pieces. But I think that it's going to take forever to get anything off the ground in terms of an appropriate area for dog owners to be able to walk their dogs. And I don't think that we should really sitting on our hands for 10 years just trying to figure out how to make this sort of stuff work. And I'm just wondering, I don't know the answer, but I'd love us to be able to just sort of sit down and just try and go, okay, what does a solution look like? Because we've got to get this sort of stuff resolved, and maybe it's like advocating for an amendment to the bylaw or whatever it is, whether or not there's community action that can happen to sort of kind of break the deadlock on that or whatever it is. But I think that as a board we really need to try and think of a solution that we can execute relatively quickly. That's all.
Thanks, Tyrone. Yes, I know it's an ongoing topic that a few are talking about, and we were scratching the surface the other day with some staff. So I think it is a discussion to continue forward. I'm not sure where it falls into in your plan discussions or LTP bids and what that looks like. But for me, it's definitely asking for some staff time to do a bit more research. But I'll also find that link that I got sent the other day. Yeah, so leave that with
there
me.
are some common sense solutions in there. We just need to be able to find them. Yeah.
Definitely. Thanks, Tyrone. Howard, anything to share?
No, we're pretty good. The only thing I've got a query on, which probably is just general delay, is have we got any feedback on the review of the Marine Drive that was getting done, I think about a month to 6 weeks ago? There was a conversation about people walking around Marine Drive, and people were going out to look at the road, and we were going to get a memo on it rather sooner than later. It's been a month, 6 weeks. Is that still too soon, or is sooner or later more like 3 months sort of scenario?
Is that the Chartreuse Bay part that was part of the head-to-head walkway kind of stuff? That may take time from what I understand.
Pedestrians are walking on, getting pedestrians not walking on the road in dangerous positions, that sort of scenario. Have we got any feedback on that?
I haven't seen any feedback on it yet. I think it was only not the last meeting, but the one before, maybe. But we can follow up. We can follow up just to see, if there's any initial feedback. That we're going to look at some short-term safety measures, if there was anything short-term that they could put in there. So I'll follow up.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, I know it was only a month ago, but then if you keep your toe on the accelerator, you'll get a response. Otherwise, it'll just get put on the back burner and never returned, unfortunately.
No, I think there is an action around it, so something has to happen if there's an action.
I'd put my name. Great. Cheers. I'd put my name up to be part of that meeting, Howard. And as yet, haven't been contacted by Andrew Hensley, who was running it, so I'm not even sure if it's taken place. No. Well, if it hasn't taken place, we should have at least got, hey, sorry guys, we never came out. That would be easy enough to do. If we could just keep a note on it, follow up on it, that'd be great.
Yep. Thanks for that, Howard. Scott.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to bring up one last thing, and it's not really a members exchange thing, but destination management plan. I know, there's $40 million given out by the government for councils to come up with a destination management plan. We've got our own one. Are we going to see any movement on that before this board is, over? The term for this board is over, or is that going to be for the next board to pick up and basically start again?
Liz, do we have any feedback on where we're at with that one?
Penelope, do you know about that, about what's happening with the destination management plan? We have got them in for a briefing.
Yeah. I don't know a great deal. What I can tell you is that they have 3 separate strategic pieces of work that they're doing. One of those is the destination management plans, of which there'll be 2, one for the city and one for Banks Peninsula, and that they want to align some of the high-level work for all of those 3 strategic projects, so that slowed things down a little bit, and also that they have been engaging with the runangers around the destination management plan, because they really want to get the partnership work with the runangers as an integral first step, and that is taking a little longer than what they had thought. So we are wanting a briefing for you. We've had a placeholder in several times which keeps being moved, but we are following up with that weekly, really, to see if we can get something to you.
Awesome, thanks for that, Pen. No, I appreciate they need the mana whenua and the work with the runangers, but it would be nice to work with this community board as well, since a lot of it's their work. So, but thanks, Ben.
Scott. Right, so Andrew did ask my question before about the flood hui, so thanks for that update, Robin. But I think we got a bit confused within that flood work for Little River. Now I know that information goes back to last year rather than the flooding event in December. So it'd be good to have information come out, because I've had members of the community asking when that's going to happen. So anything that come out and with tentative dates would be appreciated. The only other one is, I'll just play around here, bear with me a moment, is the playground in Little River. See if I can get my photos up, because my children have spent the last 4 days at the playground. So I just would like, if I can get up to share my screen. I'm not sure if it's going to happen. If I can't, that's fine. Bear with me. Share screen. Photos. See if I can go to photos. Access to photo. One. Sorry, bear with me. I'm running technology. Go back. Cancel that. Share. No, it's not going to work. Sorry, team. Anyway,
I want to send the photos through to Linda, and we'll get them. You can show them this afternoon. Or after.
Yeah, maybe. Like I say, we've even had shout outs on the local Facebook pages to say that no, that's not going to work either. Okay. To say that sorry, video again. To say that thanks for the playground and everything. They haven't seen their children for 4 days now. So like I say, the playground has been a great success. The local children are raving about it. The visitors to the area think it's fantastic. It is really good. So big shout out to staff and everyone that's in the trust, Little River Wairua Community Trust, for getting behind that and having it all come forward. So I think that is me from what I had to share this week. So if I could get Ruben.
Sorry, I've got. Can I just quickly? I'm sorry,
Nigel.
Can I just ask? I haven't seen. I wanted requested some information on the fire bell that disappeared in Akaroa. I just a quick question to staff. Did anyone get a feedback on that?
Yeah, sorry, I did get an answer. I must have not sent it to you, obviously. The fire bell is at Mark Thompson's place, who is the fire brigade.
He's a cousin. That's all right.
Yeah, and that was taken up there by Fens, who I think. I don't want to say claiming. I think they own it. I'm not sure, but it's still actually it's with our heritage people to come back with a formal answer about it. But it's found and safe.
That's good. That's the main thing. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Okay. Thanks, Nigel. And I did see somebody else's hand up. Who was anything else?
I think that was Jane. I think that was Jane earlier around the playground, Tori.
Okay.
Just quickly. Yeah, that was an amazing project because the community co-designed that playground with staff. Staff were absolutely incredible at coming and working with the community, coming to the local community breakfast. The children actually chose those designs. They had a whole lot of pictures up at the breakfast at a low level, and the kids got to choose and decide what they wanted. The community were incredibly involved in it right from the beginning. It was part of Little River Big Ideas community plan, and so part of the reason that everyone is loving that so much is because they own the design of it, and I just huge shout out to those council staff that work so closely, and the Little River Trust, and particularly Nessa Mitchell, who just worked so hard to make it happen. So very exciting project.
Sorry, you there? technical issues with my phone.
Yeah, we
Yes,
can
Jane,
hear you now, Tori.
Sorry about that. Jane, thank you so much. Yes, it was a massive collaboration with the community, and the community are really pleased. I even had a couple of school kids going, I picked that slide when I was at the breakfast. So like I say, the kids have got the buy-in. It is fantastic. I'll send through some photos to the board. Apparently the first ones that got to try the new playground were the high school kids that straight off the school bus on Wednesday. There was about half a dozen high school kids thoroughly enjoying the playground. So like I say, big shout out to everybody, big shout out to staff, Marcy, Sam Sharland, everybody that's been behind that. It's been great. So thank you. Ruben, I think that's us. So are you able to close the meeting?
Sure. Kia whakarea te tapu, kia wātia ai te ara, kia tūru ki whakataha ai, kia tūru ki whakataha ai, haumi e, hui e, tā ki e.
Kia ora. Thank you, everyone.